welcome to day 3 of Hedgehog Hollow's relaunch. Today I'm delighted to be able to tell you that I'm going to be working on Concord 9th's affiliate program. And today I'm going to show you 2 cards using their March releases. So first of all, we're going to have a card to make which looks like a moth, and if I put him to the side here, you can see you can actually flap the wings, and it has some beautiful vellum details in it. And then in part 2, I'm also going to show you how to use your distress inks again in a completely different way to make this bright and funky retro butterfly. So let's get started with part 1, and be sure to look for part 2 on our YouTube channel. So let's get started making our butterfly element first of all. Now this one will have to dry overnight, so I'm going to cut the video after this element. And I'm going to use the Concord 9th Butterfly Beauty, and I have some watercolour. This is the Canson cardstock. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tape it down. So let me just grab my temporary tape. And what I'm going to do, so this is just a Teflon craft sheet, which I'll link up in the blog post. And I just tape this down. And what that means is I can apply lots and lots of water and heat and anything else that I want, and my image will stay right there. And I just use the magnets to hold that craft sheet down. Okay. So I'm actually going to use, first of all, this more solid stamp. So this is the first of your 3-step stamping. I'm going to pop that down on there. And I'm going to pick that up on my Misty. And I found that the stamp press, depending on what one you have, is the best to use for this technique. And we're going to start off with the antique linen being the lightest. And I'm going to ink up my stamp quite well. And then I'm going to take my water spritzer. Now I have a big one on my desk, otherwise I find I'm running constantly to one of our toilets to refill it. And I'm going to just mist it over, and I'm going to stamp it down. Now what that gives you is quite a watery butterfly, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep building up the colours. So first of all, I'm just going to heat dry this one. And you can see I'm moving my heat tool around. So you saw me move my heat tool around so that I move that watermark around, because later on that watermark will give us a really nice effect. Then I'm going to go in with some walnut stain, which is slightly darker. And this time I'm going to spritz again. So that just loosens my ink. And then I'm going to take a piece of kitchen towel and I'm going to dab away areas. So that's where you're not going to get any ink. And you'll see again, so I just get some little darker patches, and I don't want anything too heavy because I've got a second step to my stamp. So again, I'm just going to heat dry this. And I'm going to put my inks back here so you can see the 4 colours that we are using. And these are the only 4 colours that I use to get this effect. Now we're going to go to our medium butterfly. So this is the more pixelated butterfly. And first of all, I'm going to go in with some more tea dye. Antique linen. And again, I'm going to spritz. And I'm going to dab off in places. And because I didn't want that one too poorly, I just picked up with some kitchen towel. Now I'm going to go with my walnut stain. And I want quite a lot of walnut stain, so I'm going to leave this one fairly solid. I'm going to give it my spritz water. I'm just going to pick out a few little areas that I don't want it to go onto. And this is the great thing about using the craft sheet in your stamp press, because you can apply water, you're not going to do any damage. You can just go in with your heat tool, and again, it's not going to do anything to that press. in a new shade. So I'm going to bring in some Vintage Photo. And again, I'm going to ink up my stamp. And we're going to spritz it with water to activate that ink. And I'm going to pick out some areas. I'm going to pick out those to start with. And the great thing about this technique is I can keep going back over and over and over. And again, just make sure you keep heat drying between layers. So now, to more central to this butterfly, I'm going to use some fired brick. So I'm going to ink up my stamp, and I'm going to still ink it all over. And we're going to activate that ink with water. I'm going to take off my tips and my base because I like those darker colours. And just very gently, I'm going to take out the middle. It's better with this technique to lay down too little ink and need to go back, as opposed to having too much ink, which is more difficult to take back. So I still want to add just a little bit more of the brownie shade, so I'm going to go back with my Vintage Photo. And I'm just going to still go into those central areas. And I'm going to take some walnut stain right into the middle. And the thing with this is just about building it up. So I'm going to fast forward through it, and you can see me as I keep adding. So the next stage, I'm going to add my butterfly body, which is right here. And I'm just going to lay that on top where I want her to go. And first of all, I start out with the antique linen. And again, I'm going to activate the ink with some water before I stamp down. And then I'm going to go back with some darker shades. So I'm going to start off with my walnut stain. And I don't want too much walnut stain in there because it is quite dark. And then finally, I'm going to go in again with my Vintage Photo. And then I'm just going to touch her body with a little bit of the fired brick. There we go. And then before we progress, I'm just going to dry that off. And the next thing for us to do is to do our outline. So to do the outline, there's the third step in our 3-step stamping. And I'm going to line that up like so. I've got to take off my stamp. And because we've blurred some of the detail lines, you don't have to line it up perfectly because nobody will ever notice. And to do that, I'm going to use some black ink, and I decided to use the My Favourite Things hybrid ink. It works well with water and solvents, and it just gives me a nice, fine, crisp line, which is what I wanted. I did experiment with the soot, but I preferred the look of this one. So that is our finished butterfly. Now the last thing I need to do, so I'm just going to make sure she's nice and dry, is I need to add some crackle accents. Now this is my crackle accents, and if you wonder where I reach to, this is where my stamp chamois goes, and I always keep, when I'm on a project, just stick it in there, and my stamp chamois is fine because I can always just take my water mister, spray a bit of water in there if it goes a bit dry and crusty. So you want to go all over your butterfly. I suggest starting a bit like icing around the edges, and then filling it in. Okay, so now that's all coloured in, I'm going to leave it to dry overnight and we'll come back to it in the morning to finish our card. So I left my butterfly to dry overnight, and if I bring him up you can see the beautiful crackle effects that crackle accents gives me. And you'll see on my original card, if I take this off here, that I actually pulled some of that crackling off to give me the really distressed look. So to do that, I took some of these barber's brushes. Now I use barber's brushes all the time. These are really, really old. I wash them under the sink, and because they're barber's brushes, they're quite happy to take water and soap and everything like that. And then you can just add in new colours. And I've got a few other techniques that will be coming up using these. And I washed these off last night, so I know they're nice and clean. And what I did was I took my walnut stain and I just went over it to try and rub some colour into those crackles. In the process of doing that, you sometimes do rip off some of that crackling, which is how I achieved that effect. If not, you can go in with your fingers and you can just pull it back, and you can just start pulling pieces off like this. And then when you go in with your barber's brush, it will add that colour back in again so that you get the beautiful effects. I'm just going to really kind of concentrate some colour into there. So you can take off as much as the crackle as you want, you can leave it on, you can just rub the ink in. It's entirely up to you how altered you want your moth to be. And I just sometimes kind of go over because that loosens a little bit the crackle. And that's why I leave it on this sheet until it's all done. You can see I can start taking pieces off like that. Now I'm just going to fill in with some ink. There we go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some very sharp paper snips and I'm going to cut out our butterfly. So there's our finished butterfly, and again what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my, I'm going to do some vintage photo this time, and I'm just going to go around a couple of these edges, just flicking my pad where there's a little bit more white than I'd like there to be. And you can also just use your brush to move some of that colour around. So if there's gaps in your crackle that you want to fill in, you can also use the brush for that. Go. So there's our moth. And I call him a moth just because of the dark colours. I mean, he could be more of a red admiral butterfly if you wanted him to be, or her to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold in the middle either side of the body. So you can see that when I have this one and I put it to the side like this, you can see the amount of depth and dimension, and you can almost make it flap open, which is a lovely effect. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create these vellum overlays to go onto our wings. So to create that, I have some vellum here, and first of all I'm going to cut out my detailed wings, and I'm going to use a piece of post-it tape to hold them in place, and I'm going to run that through my vagabond, And the reason I do it in this order is because on my original card, if I show you the edge of this sleeve, I decided to just slightly cut off some of the edges so that it looked more raggedy and altered. You can line them up perfectly, or you can go down that route, just depending on the effect you want to get. I'm going to lift these off. You can see the lovely textures you get. And they're really a nice, deep, quick release dye. So you won't spend lots of time weeding it out. There we go. Put those back to the side. And now we're going to take our larger butterfly wings. And it's best if you line it up on the reverse side. So I'm going to go like so. And I'm going to grab a bit more of the post-it tape so that I can stick it down. You can see here I'm just lining it up. And now I'm going to tape it down. And I'm going to use my craft mat. This is one that I took out my Misty. And I'm going to colour in the two wings. Again, I'm going to use my two shaving brushes. And I'm going to pick out some walnut stain and some fired brick. So I start off with the walnut stain. And I'm just going to go all over these leaves. And you can use smooth circles to get some overall colour. You can dab it on like this to get some darker patches. And I'm just going to keep going. That's one. So you can see there we've got a nice overall colour. And now I'm going to pick up my fired brick, and I'm picking up lots of colour on there again. And actually with the fired brick I don't want it all over, so you can see I'm just kind of patting it down just to get some of those red accents, which will complement the red that we put in the crackled layer. So like so. And now I'm just going to pop my inks to the side again, and we're going to assemble our butterfly. So for that I'm going to use some glossy accents. Glossy accents would give you a layer like this if we put it all over, except it wouldn't crackle. It'd be like a smooth raised layer. And it also makes an awesome adhesive. So to do this, I was quite liberal down the body of my butterfly. And then what you want to do is you want to put in your vellum wings. So first of all, I wanted it to raise up, so I took some of these ink cubes, which give me the perfect stand, which are nice and small, and also give me the layers that I wanted. So you can see here I'm just standing up my vellum against them. I'm going to do the same on this side, and this just means it's going to dry raised, which is going to make your card lovely in 3D. So I'm going to pop this to the side somewhere safe while we assemble our card base. So for everything here I need for my card base while our butterfly is drying. And first of all I'm going to take another piece of that distressed speciality paper, and we're going to make our beautiful background like this one here. Okay, so we're going to put this lovely doily design into it. So first of all I'm just going to use a light distress ink, and I've chosen to use the antique linen. I'm going to pick up lots of colour onto my shaving brush, and I'm going to just go all over. And you will see that I don't get any hard lines, I just get a nice soft balance of colour. And at this point all I want to do is just go over my workspace just with some light colour. And we're going to go back at the end, so if there's still white areas showing, that's absolutely fine. We just don't want it to be too stark. So I'm going to keep my lighter one with its brush to the side because we'll need that again shortly. And this is just a Stampin' Up! Doily that I had left over. And I'm just going to put a little bit of temporary adhesive in a few places, like this. Because I just want it to be a little bit tacky so that I can work within it. It doesn't move too much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my doily over and I'm going to pick a colour of ink. Let's start with some Vintage Photo this time. Oh, that's the wrong... I haven't used this one, I'll put that one there. So just try to keep one to the side that you purely use for your light colour. I've just taken one that is unused. And then you're going to go over your doily. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the walnut stain. And at this point I don't mind starting to mix my brushes with these darker colours because I want that nice blending. And then I'm just going to go in last of all with a little bit of fired brick, just dabbing here and there because I just want that red to come through so that it complements the reds we've put into our butterfly. So when I lift up my doily I have this lovely masked effect, and I'm going to do the same down here. And the Speciality Distress paper will allow you to get lots and lots of blending and depth. And the reason that I switched to these shading brushes was because I just found I was getting too many harsh lines with some of the other blenders that I had. So once you've got this effect, I'm going to put the lids back on these so I don't make a mess. Then I'm going to go back to my lighter shade and I just went all over. And the reason I did that is it takes away some of the sharper lines that you've got in your blending and it gets rid of any truly white patches. And I don't want to get rid of the lacy design because it's so pretty, but I don't also want it to be the complete focus. I want us to focus on that beautiful moth that we've created. So you can see there that we've just slightly taken the harsh edge off of them, like so. Okay, so I'm going to mount this onto a piece of Sahara sand. I really love it. It's a nice weight and it's a lovely neutral colour too. And I'm just going to trim this down just slightly so that we have a nice border. So I'm just taking a small slither off of top and one side. There we are, so that will now fit perfectly. And I'll put our doily to the side. And I'm just going to emboss this before we stick it down. So I'm going to use from the stamp set, which is just here. There's some lovely sentiments in this set. And I went for the "you bring out the beauty in everything." So what we are going to do, I'm going to grab a block and put that on. Now one thing I would recommend doing before you emboss is just to quickly put your heat tool over this area. And now I'm just going to speed through me doing the heat embossing. And for reference, I'm using a detailed black embossing powder, which I'll also link to in the blog post. So now our butterfly is dry, and you'll know your glossy accents is dry. As you can see, it's now clear rather than cloudy. And you can see also, if I turn it to the side, the beautiful depth that it has dried with, just by putting those ink cubes in to keep it up. And we'll use those again in just a moment. So I'm going to fold our butterfly in half. And again, I'm going to take our glossy accents And I'm going to put some down the spine of our butterfly. And I'm going to stick him or her in place like this. And again, I'm just going to bring in those cubes like that. And what I then did was I added some accents. So I used some glossy accents and two of the black and the white enamel accents. And I just went round and I did some dots. So I have a bit of an OCD brain. And sometimes these do just clog up a little. And for that I keep this long pin just at the back of my work area. And you can see I just put it in and keep wiggling it round. And then you get these nice. And I try to be random. Let's move this. It's not going to get in the way. Again, I'll move this one just to the corner there. But I do have to have some kind of order to them. And then I went in with some black. Again, just stick your pin in, wiggle it around. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. You can also just run the nozzle under warm water. Try not to get any inside the bottle, but that will also loosen it off if it's a while since you've used yours. And then I added a few also with the glossy accents. And you can just keep going in and adding them as you see fit. I'm just going to add a couple more white ones. And it just gave it that little something, I think, to finish off that altered look. There we go. So I am now going to put this card aside and let it dry. And this will what it will look like once you've finished. So you'll see here all my dots have dried on. I hope you enjoyed checking out this card. Be sure to check out part 2 to make your own pixelated butterfly using the same stamp set but some different techniques. There's a linked blog post below which has all of your supply lists and lots of in-depth pictures and things you can have a look at on the blog. Be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube to get future videos via email, and you can follow us on Instagram for behind the scenes pictures and some sneak peeks of what's coming up on the blog. We also have a Facebook group where we share inspiration and exclusive pictures that you won't see anywhere else. Just search for Stamping at Hedgehog Hollow and you can put a join request in there. And also every day we're live on Facebook at Hedgehog Hollow Inc. with stamping tips, tricks, new products, all sorts of things. So be sure to follow along there too. Happy stamping and we'll see you again soon. Bye.